Welcome back to Tacos and Trends, the podcast by Made Trends, where we explore the intersection of culture, consumer behavior, and the trends shaping tomorrow. You're listening to The Future is Fractional, a special limited series where we sit down with powerhouse women reshaping C-suites and showing founders how to scale with intention. Today's guest is a standout. Jeanne Myers, thank you for being here, is one of the most respected voices in strategic communications. She's worked across media, tech, nonprofit, and social impact spaces, helping brands build trust, shape narratives, and communicate with clarity. At a time when founders are expected to lead publicly, show up socially, and navigate cultural landmines, Jeannie brings unmatched and experience in telling the right stories at the right moment, and she's here to tell us how fractional COOs are driving the future. If you like this series, please like below, follow, send to a fellow founder, and thank you for listening. Thank you, Jeannie, for being here. I'm personally very excited. As we were just chatting before, I was saying when we spoke previously, you were for me were like the missing link in this like fractional series.
Yeah.
And I feel like really just have a stronghold in this space. So I'm very grateful you're here today. So and what we can learn. So maybe just to kick us off, Jeannie, like could you maybe just for our listeners who maybe haven't had as much access to like C-suite experience, what exactly is the role of Chief Communications Officer? What do they do? What don't they do?
Yeah. Well, I think the best word picture I can, like the best shorthand I can give is that for a big, complex organization, whether it's a company, a nonprofit, an academic institution, that chief communications officer sits atop and they're like an air traffic controller
Oh,
for
okay.
all of the messages that are going out to stakeholders.
Okay.
Um, whether it's to customers, investors, employees are obviously one of the biggest audiences there are. And I might be dating myself, but if you ever watched West Wing, the
Hmm.
White House communications director is sort of the my model for, when it's done well for what
Okay.
a communications officer does.
Okay, amazing. And what do you think that people sometimes misunderstand about the role? Like, do they get it confused? Do they think that like you sit like with marketing? Because I've heard some people have that confusion, like, oh, we don't need anyone in like on comms. We have this great marketing team. And I'm like, oh, for me, they're very different.
Yeah, first, I think the biggest misunderstanding is that strategic communications or communications is just what we sometimes refer to as public relations
Yeah.
or just dealing or communicating with the media. Strategic communications is really increasingly more about the strategy part of that title. um, you know Ideally, best practice is that person sits at the table with the leaders of the company as opposed to reporting up through a COO or a CMO. No disrespect. There are product and consumer facing companies who have great communications people who do need to report up to marketing because maybe they're product related and it's different than the corporate brand. But
Yeah.
the corporate communications person really ideally is very much involved with long-term strategy and how it's being executed on the daily. The strategy for a strategic communications team has to map exactly to the business strategy. And that's
Perfect.
sometimes what folks either don't understand or don't realize.
Yeah, I think that we've seen that in like whenever we get into the deep dive of each of these roles is like how when executed like perfectly, how strategic they are, and that has to like map back to like the actual like business goals, right? And that there it's a very tight relationship. And if you like lose control of that, then you can like lose some of your strategy and lose like some of the like the goal
Yeah.
setting you're trying to hit. So you've led comms at global firms, supported nonprofits, and now advise startups. What's kind of like the through line? Like, what's your secret sauce, Jeannie?
Well, I think what makes me kind of different, I guess what my superpower
Yeah.
is I do have this ability to sort of ingest a lot of information and bring a unique perspective. I can distill a ton and narrow it down to things that matter the most.
Yeah.
That's true of whether I'm looking at a stack of documents or, binders and volumes of strategic plans, kind of like picking a needle out of the haystack, if you will, kind of
Yeah.
reverse engineering it. So
Yeah.
it's
I
really
think when
just,
go
yeah,
ahead, please.
Distillation is probably it.
Distillation. No, and I thought it was interesting when we spoke before as well, like, you just used the analogy of, like, a puzzle. Like, you understand the pieces very quickly, and you understand how to put the puzzle together, which, like, sounds like, "Oh, yeah, of course," but that's very hard to do, and especially, right, whenever you can have so many, like, documents, personalities, conversations. I think being able to do that in an efficient manner is an incredible superpower, and I think that sometimes people don't even know that they need it because if they don't have the ability to do that, no matter what role they're sitting in, they don't see like about like the big picture and how the whole puzzle looks. So I think having someone who's like able to do that is amazing. And so then what was how did could you maybe just walk us through how you went from like in-house and then how you've ended up in fractional? Was it like a progression, a pivot? It was it just like you woke up one day and realized I feel like, sometimes things happen like along the path. So could you take us on the route?
Yeah, I mean, getting into this profession in the first place was a bit of a, anomaly, and I don't know that there are that many people who um, intentionally go into it because it is kind of an evolving discipline. I have been on in many sides of the communications equation. I started as a journalist. That's what I was. I studied a broadcast
Ah,
journalist with University of Missouri. Mizzou alum here. My first job was going into political consulting after the journalism experience. And then I went to work, that's more on the advisory level, right? And that progression led me into an agency that did a lot of public affairs. We worked on public policy, but we also had a side of the business that was supporting all kinds of big consumer facing initiatives and brands. So at any given time, I might have been working on something that was very wonky policy, Washington, D.C. focused on the other hand. And the other side of it, I would be supporting a big initiative like I got to help drive the 75th anniversary for Mr. Peanut and all the
I love
initiatives
it. I
that
love
happened
it.
for him at the same time. But then after many years of it being on the advisory role side of the business, I actually was recruited to go in-house and
Okay.
lead communications for companies there. And there was a period of time where I did that at a startup level. I moved over to companies like Toys R Us, which was really getting their feet wet in e-commerce. And at the first time, I went into the music business at EMI, which is one of the world's biggest music companies. Now it's owned by all the other music majors. And then I worked as the global EVP of communications for Vice President Al Gore's cable network. It was called Current TV, if you remember. And
Amazing.
after that, I went to work for Martha Stewart, living Omnimedia, when Martha Stewart and her brand had media properties and retail relationships under one public company umbrella. So I led comms for that. It was at that point when I decided I was burnout and
Yeah.
I needed to get off the habit trail. So I took a package. I left that company when I had the opportunity to do that. And I was so ready to do something new because in this role, it is high burnout. It can be 24/7. You're managing crises ongoing. It's just one problem, putting out one fire after the other while
Yeah.
trying to move the ball proactively down the field.
Yeah.
So I stepped off the habit trail and was looking for, opportunities to advise, invest, maybe open up a mom and pop coffee shop. I kept getting asked to consult. Could you please come over and help us with this problem? And it struck me that my superpower is being an advisor more than being a founder,
Yeah.
being that fairy godmother, angel on the shoulder, bringing perspective. And it clicked for me. Now, initially, I would describe myself as so many fractionals do, as an accidental fractional
Yeah.
or an unintentional fractional because I wasn't sure at that point whether I wanted to go all in or keep my options open. I talked to so
Yeah.
many fractional executives who are in that same boat. They're not
Yeah.
sure whether they should plant their fractional flag and say, come and get it, or if they should make a dedicated search to go for a full-time job somewhere else. This has been where I've been living for the last decade in the fractional space. During COVID, I was fortunate enough to be able to um, latch on an affiliate with an agency, which does B2B tech communications, a gift because I was able to uh, attach myself to a team of human beings during a crazy pivotal time that could have been
Yeah.
devastating, lonely, terrible. So I loved that experience. But then there came a point where life is sort of getting back to normal. And I really wanted to flex my kind of strategic and marketing side of what I do. And I've really felt like it was time to go back to being a solopreneur, keeping my options open. And so while a friend of that agency, really for the last 3 years now, I've been back to being a solopreneur, this time an intentional fractional.
Mhm. Amazing. Could I ask you, because for me, it's interesting because there's like so many subtleties and there's always the rhetoric or like the jargon is. And so I feel like for you, is there a difference between being fractional and like, and that you're like running your own small agency? Like, is there a difference? And do you
Oh,
know
yeah.
what not that there, and what's the difference?
I think, well, I believe there's a difference. And a lot of it is just branding.
Mm,
By that, I mean, in some cases, the term fractional gets some criticism because it's a fancy term for freelancing, but
yeah,
actually, it's not true. A
I agree.
true fractional position is when it's like you have to liken it to a private jet where you're buying a partial seat, partial ability to
Yeah,
fly in that plane without owning it. So what that means as an executive, when you're a fractional, you're going in at all in as that person's CXO,
yeah,
and taking a very big leadership role where you're devoting all your time and energy and brain power to that brand. Whereas there's two other flavors. One is solopreneur, solo advisor. That's the camp I'm in right now.
mhm,
Although I have been positioned as an interim leader or fractional
yeah,
as part of what I offer. Then there's the small agency. When I first started out, I did what a lot of folks who were getting into this game did is I wanted to position myself as being something bigger. So I positioned myself as an agency with a team. Now
yeah.
I position myself as a solopreneur with an active network that I can activate when I need to
Yeah.
scale.
That's like perfect that makes perfect sense. I love this analogy of the private jet. I mean, who doesn't like to fly private, first of all?
Yeah.
And no, and I feel like it really places like it makes like people understand like the premium of it, right? And I think also if you're like early stage startup as well, right? And whenever for me, a lot of times with this like fractional work, it's because you wouldn't be able to make the investment in like
Right.
in hiring, right? In hiring full-time in-house. And honestly, maybe I was speaking to the woman who we interviewed as the CFO, and maybe you don't like actually need like full time, right? Maybe at a fractional amount is like so you can save budget, you can get what you need, and then there's the opportunity to scale up. But I'm wondering how your model works as well, just to like keep going down this path. And so, do you normally find that you set up an infrastructure, like you solve whatever the current problem is and set up some infrastructure, and then you work yourself out of a job where then they're growing and they hire someone full time? How does that work? Because I find myself how we work as
Yeah.
an agency is we normally are also like very integrated in to the companies that we work with, but we normally know that we have like an 18 or 24-month like runway, and then they can take over. Like we normally like bridge the gap, get the programs running, and then we move on to the next client. So
Yeah. I mean,
that was a lot of information there. But so kind of is your plan to like work yourself out of business, or could it be like a very long-term relationship?
the answer is yes. In other words, I don't have one box that I fit in. I
Mm.
have to be ready to offer my services in a lot of different flavors. So in some
Yeah.
cases, one of the first projects I worked on was I had the ability, I was fortunate enough to be tapped as a interim CMO for a startup, an autonomous vehicle company, and literally started with them while they were in his garage in Palo Alto.
Okay.
Not making this up,
Love
where
it.
there was a whiteboard right next to his kid's bike,
Okay. Perfect.
pre-seed, you know, pre revenue, pre-product, right? And it was really at that point where my job was going to be helping them define the brand, launch the brand, build an organization to care and feed for the brand, and work myself out of the position. And that was a
Yeah.
3 year thing. We went from pre-seed to one of the biggest Series B raises of that year. And I was really happy to graduate and be on call after that
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
needed after we
Yeah.
helped fill in the organization for what they needed as a business to business enterprise. In
Yeah.
some cases, I'm asked to come in and parachute in and be an interim leader. In some cases, I'm asked to be parachute in and be a mentor. Increasingly, there are very talented communications pros who get hired into jobs without having benefit of been in the trenches with some crazy stuff. They've
Yeah.
never been involved with a merger or an acquisition. Maybe they've never been right in the hot seat when there's been a huge leadership change or a really, really significant crisis. Or
Mhm.
maybe they've never done comms at a public company before, but they're really good and talented. They just need someone to help them who's been through it to kind of help them
Yeah.
navigate those things. And that's the other thing that I do as an interim leader.
Oh, that's amazing. Because no, I think that we see, like, for, like, employee retention, right, even at a high level, that people are really like, employees are really asking for, like, "You have to give me the support that I need to be successful." I love that. So, I guess the question is for everyone is, like, how do you balance it all? Like, do you have is it so I think it's interesting because if I've now, like, interviewed, like, 5 of the women for this series, and I would say that you're either in one c the full creatives in the space are like, well, we add some clients, we see, and then, like, if you go to the entire other side where you see, like, where we spoke to, like, CEOs and CFOs, it's like, I have this amount of time blocked for this quarter, this is how many people I can take, this is the type of projects. How because the crazy thing is, I feel like when you work fractionally or when you work like this, you don't control the type of work that comes in, right? I think people I have a lot of conversations with people who are like, "Oh, it, like, must be great to, like, run your own thing." But you're not really running your own thing. Like, you're doing the work yourself, right? But it feels like, at least in my experience, a lot of times, like, you don't have as much control over what projects come in or what their timelines are. So, and obviously you don't if you're I'm imagining you, like myself, if you're, like, in this game, you're, like, hungry, right? And, like, you like opportunities. So it's not like you're turning away good opportunities. So what's the how do you balance it? What's the secret there, or do you have a formula? I'm asking for a friend mainly here. I'm gonna take a few notes.
You know, I, I here's my experience. I think initially, when, my advice is to do what I did initially, where I was that unintentional, accidental fractional. I wasn't sure this was the life for me. And I also needed to pay the mortgage. So I began taking things, kind of everything that came my way. And,
Yeah.
natural referrals, because I have a good network, they would come in and I took on things that maybe I shouldn't have taken on,
Mm,
either because I don't like doing them or I didn't like doing them. And it
yeah.
wasn't really tapping my value. So the first thing is the approach it in that first year or two. You can and should have a learner's mindset. Take it on, even if you're not sure, because you're going to learn. You're going to learn what you love and what makes you light up, and you're going to learn what you hate. Right. Secondly, it really depends on whether your goal is to have build an agency, a service organization that is going to live beyond you. Maybe your name's on the door, but you're building a big organization of full-time employees. That's a very different proposition than where I was, which was, eventually being a low risk fractional
Yeah.
without the cumbersome admin of building an organization. And then, as you progress in that business, you're going to get to a point where you really understand how to niche down what you
Yeah.
do and understand what you love to do, what you're good at, where your value is most, and build that framework for yourself so that you can remind yourself what it is you're doing every day. It
Yeah.
allows you to say no to things that aren't appropriate or things you don't want to do. And then the other important piece to this is the way I scale as a solopreneur is I have a vast network and I monetize that network because I
Mhm.
have referral partnerships in place with lots of other service practitioners, other
Smart.
agencies, folks who might specialize in one thing or the other, where they build websites or are fractional CFOs or banks or whatever it is. I love to take care of every inquiry that comes my way by saying either, yes, that's for me. I'd love to pitch your business, or not for me, but you should meet these 3 other people who could help you out.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's, like, very, very smart as well. Then it also creates, like, a separate, like, revenue referral
Yeah.
stream, right? That's great because I feel like that's always, I think always the fear as well is, like, if you're 100% client based and you have no other revenue stream, if the client work slows down, then it could lead, I feel like, to taking projects that are, like, more unsavory. And I feel like my personal experience as well is if you take projects that are, like, as you say, I love how you say, like, niche down. Like, whenever you've
Yeah.
niche down and you're like, "This is what I do. This is what I'm good at. This is what I like. I can hit this and I like to do it." It also feels like you can work at, like, a more productive level because you don't have that, like, burnout of all the other pieces. Do you
Yeah.
whenever we have, like, a lot of projects that I'm like, I don't know." I also feel like it feels more like it's not as inspiring and it's easy to, like,
Yeah.
keep it all moving. But whenever you're in that, like, the quadrant of, like, I'm good at it, like to do, right? I feels like you can, like, turn and burn and, like, it just, like, really, like, fuels itself. To shift gears a little bit, so as people try and understand, like, really what a, like, CCO can do, can you tell
Yeah.
me, like, what type of transformation do you think, like, an early stage company could imagine? Like, because it feels like it's a little bit the same as, like, with, like, general counsel, is that a lot of people don't think about, like, about calling until there's a crisis, right? Which
Yeah.
obviously call then, but I'm guessing it makes a lot more sense to have, like, a framework and have the relationship develop before there's, like, a crisis, right? Because I feel like, it's the old adage is, like, you don't want to, like, solve the crisis in the crisis. You need to have, like, some tools already ready to go.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm a believer in when it comes to a startup level company, you know, typically that framework starts with the founder and some a team that's building the MVP, the most viable
Mhm.
product, and outsourcing everything else. I've been in many pitch decks as the CMO or the CCO
Yeah.
of startups as they're out raising seed or Series A, and they're not ready to commit yet to that full-time headcount. And they
Yeah.
have a general counsel and they have a CFO or a controller or a chief people officer. Those are things that are very often the ones that come in last as a company
Yeah.
starting to scale.
Yeah.
Um, and it makes sense, in order to do that. Very often, a startup isn't focused on needing all of those things. Their organization isn't big enough. Their customer base isn't big enough.
Yeah.
They need to focus on the product first and
Exactly.
driving to a revenue or building value in the business. Of course, communications is a huge part of what's necessary to go out and raise money. Just
Yeah.
to make sure your brand is imbued with gravitas and that people know who you are, and there's some kind of editorial endorsement uh, underlying your and sort of underscoring your authority. But it doesn't have to be a full-time proposition all the time. But
Amazing.
I guess the kind of transformational work that I try and do now as an advisor is right now I'm working with a team that is part of a nonprofit, and they're standing in front of a fire hose every day,
Yeah.
reacting to inbound and doing what
Okay.
they can with the resources they have to really push their agenda forward, which is a lot. So what I've been doing with them is I've been the grown up that kind of take a look and bring perspective and help them figure out how they can prioritize certain things or, shift their strategy to do maybe fewer things better.
Yeah.
um, Edit to amplify is a phrase that I love so much.
I love that.
It's being able to come in and say with like a virtual red pen, no, no, no. And then the mission or the clarity comes through when you get rid of the extraneous stuff.
No, because it's interesting. I think that there's, like, so much misconception now about how to build, like, a successful business. I mainly blame social media just because there's a lot of, like, fake news on social media and a lot of people talking. I mean, there's for me, you're really, like, running a business whenever you're, like, there's, like, the markers of success, I feel like. There's, like, a difference between, like, building a business and, like, having a hobby, which I feel like sometimes social
Yeah.
media blurs the 2 lines and then could make you feel if you're, like, really trying to build something that's larger than yourself, it feels like maybe you might not be winning or you might not be successful because if you're judging yourself against that, which I think is like a big like millennial mindset of like you're trying to build everything in this like space where everyone's advertising and overinflating what they're doing. So it's hard to remember sometimes like, oh, like I love this and I love like everyone who's worked with me knows I love like a good like catchphrase. Like I love this, like you like niche down and like this edit to amplify, right? And then you
Yeah.
can really like power through it. I love that. It's like very, very helpful. And so
Well,
um
I'll jump in because um, the other way to look at it is that being fractional allows you to also pursue what is commonly referred to as a portfolio career,
yeah,
whereby maybe you're still working on, the practice that you have cultivated and are very experienced at, in my case, communications. But maybe over here, maybe you do want to launch like a side hustle, sell a
yeah,
product, do something that gives you joy and maybe some
yeah,
revenue too. And
yeah.
being fractional allows you to do that a lot more with a lot more efficiency than, you really wouldn't be allowed to do that in any kind of full-time gig.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. So I have a question. I feel like, it feels like comms normally is like functioning anyways, like it can function in like 24 hours a day. But
Yeah.
as a fractional, do you have any like limit? How do you manage your time? When are you available? When are you not available? What works for you? I think it's like different for everyone. What works for you? Do you have any I don't have any boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, I do set boundaries for
Okay.
myself just for efficiency.
Yeah.
When I was an up and comer, I used to, coming out of the grind it culture where, the joke was, if you don't come in on Saturday, don't bother coming in on Sunday. Um,
Yeah.
I came out of that school where,
Yeah.
if you showed up and you were at the office, that was how you were getting your badge of honor. It's how you got noticed, how you got promoted.
Yeah, like
Uh,
how early you got there, right? Same.
Exactly. And now, I mean, for many years now, I made a rule to work smarter, not harder. And one of the boundaries I set up was to try not to save work for the weekend. So
Oh,
sometimes you have to work on the weekend,
yeah,
especially if you're in a crisis management situation. That crisis does not wait for the weekend, but it's different to than, kind of intentionally saving work for the weekend. So I
yeah,
no longer try to, I rather stay really, really late on a Friday or,
yeah,
get in really, really early on a Monday, than to sort of let that work fester over the weekend. Because then you get
yeah,
the Sunday scaries and it's like a monkey on
yeah.
your back all weekend.
No,
That
that's
has
like
worked pretty
so
well.
oh, good. That's no, that's very smart. I think I was previously, like prior to having my son, I was definitely like, oh, I'll save that for the weekend when I can focus. And then exactly that. You hate it. The like, I mean, I have something like less kind to say about like Sunday scaries. I have a different name for them,
Yeah.
but I think that no, that's a really good idea. And I saw a difference from myself since I have a little boy. I didn't want to work on the weekends, and I didn't want to work super late in the evening
Yeah.
either. So it made me do something I had never done before, which was like actually block like work hours in my, which sounds like so basic, but I would always just be like, like in the business all day long. And then I would save like my work because I'm still like an employee of the company. I would save like my deliverables and I'd work on them in the weekends and the evenings, which also is exhausting. But now, yeah, so now I have like a zigzag kind of work block periods that I like schedule the work. And so I don't even have to think about it. It's just like showing up for a meeting. I show up to do like that project. No, because I feel like that's the worst. Like, and it's nice as well, like to like, I think it is really, if you come from that, like, that grind culture, which I definitely do as well, is that it was like you had to be the first one in, you had to be the last one out. You had to like come to work on Monday with like something new you had produced, even though you stayed late on Friday. And, and people, you had to make sure you sent enough emails on Saturday. So I think, and I think we see a younger generation who isn't interested in that. I've seen the culture in my own business where like my employees are like at 5 o'clock, they're not answering emails. Like they're
Oh
they're
yeah.
not doing any
Yeah.
like they are done. Which and I honestly like am happy to my surprise, I was like very happy to be like, oh, I love that boundary. Like I know like you're getting like what you're getting done during the office hours. So no, that's really good. Don't save
I
it for the weekend.
I have to say that the time blocking, absolutely, amen to that. And there's all these other time management tools that I have to use to
Yeah.
get through
Oh, Jeannie, tell us.
and ruthless prioritization to
Yeah.
get through that. Because again, one of the reasons a lot of people, including me, like to go fractional is it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
And I'm a mom, and during the summer, any parent will relate. Your obligations you'd think would go down because school's not in session,
Oh
but because
no.
camps and blah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And if you want to be there for your kid and enjoy, seeing them grow up and whatever, it is a way forward. Time management tips, absolute time blocking. I save a good hour chunk every Wednesday morning to read all the things I've been saving up to read, and I actually
Oh,
do it.
yeah.
I have there's the other favorite time management tool is something called the Pomodoro method,
Okay.
which is basically it's a timer. There was and it's named after a tomato shaped kitchen
Yeah,
timer.
yeah. That's what I was wondering. I was like, "Oh, okay.
That an
Okay.
Italian academic who is a time management academic some 25 years ago came up with, which is he determined that the optimum amount of time a human being can spend in deep focus is 25 minutes. And then they need
Okay.
to go take a break, rinse and repeat. And then maybe after 4 cycles of that, then you get up and take like a longer break, lunch break,
Yeah.
walking the block. That and you can actually get these tools online. They're all free, and it's just a buzzer will ring after 25 minutes, and it will remind you, I shouldn't be going down like, I shouldn't be shopping online right now or on
Yeah.
TikTok, I should be working. So
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
something that has saved me for sure.
I
And,
love it.
the other thing I had to learn when you're dealing with anyone else, especially, different generations, there is a new culture now. It's no longer
Yeah.
the kind of 24/7 grind. My favorite tool now for that is scheduling buttons so that I am scheduling comms, whether it's Slack or email or even LinkedIn or, social media posts to land during what most people typically call business hours. So
Yeah.
that I might be sending it out at 3 a.m. on a Friday for whatever reason, but no one's going to
Yeah.
get it till Monday morning. And
Ah,
that's
smart.
been something that I think has been, it didn't come from me. It came from the recipients who said, you're triggering me. I don't want to look at this yet. I'm not going to see it and I'm going to be anxious all weekend. So I get it.
Ah,
I get it now. And
yeah. Oh, I love that.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It's crazy how this like cultural shift from like the like bottom up, right? The younger generation. I feel like no, there's like strict boundaries. So Jeannie, can I give you we like to do like a little rapid fire here. I feel like I have a million more questions, but I'm gonna keep it moving. Okay, so a little bit of a lightning round. One communication mistake you see leaders making all the time.
Using $20 words when, a dollar word will do. One of my favorites is don't say utilize when you can say use.
Okay.
That's one.
That's that's really good. Well, what's a must have in every startup's communication toolkit?
Uh, Going through the steps where the founder is very invested in determining that company's mission, vision, and brand pillars. And by that I mean, really those foundational cornerstones that the company stands for. Really having alignment on those and understanding. You have to have that in place before you spend any resource on, you know, telling people your story outside the company. You really have to understand what you stand for before you can go out and tell that story.
I love that. Like, as like and that's like the overarching, like, North Star, right?
Yep.
One thing founders should stop doing right now in their public messaging. I feel like that's, like, similar to the previous question, but I'll just say it again in case so we can get another I like the response to the last one. So, anything that you see that's, like, really buzzy in public messaging as well, because it feels like as well, like, even like from a comms point of view, right? Like social has definitely like shifted how comms works a lot. That's a whole other conversation. But is there like let's shift the question? Is it like is there a trend, another trend that you see happening that you're just like no, like that has to stop. Like stop doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
well, yeah, I actually just talked about this on LinkedIn this week and it got a ton of response. It obviously struck a nerve. If you'd asked me that question last October, I would have said, stop doing press releases so much. They're
okay,
irrelevant. I mean, they have a place. They kind of allow you to sort of memorialize something in your brand voice for posterity and SEO, right?
yeah,
But now cut to, wow, we're in an age where SEO is no longer a thing. It's all about
yeah,
answer engine optimization in an AI world, and all the studies are showing that content that is authoritative and and official is what LLMs, large language models, prefer when they're um, providing information in in that training data.
mhm,
So your brand is going to show up based on documentation that's out there that is considered authoritative. And press releases are one of those documents. Earned
Mhm.
media, somebody else's story in a tier one publication or trade, also. So now press releases are back. And here's what I want people to stop doing: stop using the word thrilled. I'm thrilled to be appointed, or I'm thrilled at this partnership. I
Mhm.
mean, let's be honest. Who's thrilled? It's just a meaningless word.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of those sort of shiny object words that are meaningless,
yeah,
that don't add anything to a press release.
yeah.
Press releases are back. They're the new black. But
Okay, I
stop
love it.
using words like thrilled or excited or whatever, because let's just get to the meat of the information, and, you know, stop waving your jazz hands, because it's just going to get in the way of your message.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, and last one. What is, your favorite taco? What's your taco order?
Oh my gosh. My taco order?
Yeah.
Um, I am a fish taco fan through and
Okay,
through, not
okay.
fried, with cabbage, the crema, lime juice. Yeah,
All the
no
toppings.
cheese. Yeah.
Okay, no cheese. Okay, but all the other toppings. Amazing, amazing. And Jeannie, I feel like so much more to get into here, but as we wrap up here, could you tell our listeners where they can find you, follow you, contact you? Give us all the deets. Where how do we
Yeah.
get a hold of you?
You can pretty much find me on social anywhere at Jeanne P. Meyer. That's JeannePmeyer on most social medias. But for TikTok, you've got to add NY and NYC and CT on the end of it.
Okay.
Um, and that's pretty much where it is. And on LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I love to connect with people there, share ideas, etc.
Amazing. So we're going to put all those links in the comments below so everyone can click through, and you can also find some links on our social channels. Jeannie, thank you so much. This is amazing. This has been the Futures Fractional, brought to you by Tacos and Trends. Stay tuned as we continue to explore how part-time power is reshaping full-time future of business. Thank you so much.
And thank you. Thank you, Autumn.